Hello, everybody. Hey, it's Justin the Germ of Montana here. I just took the ice traction off my winterized bike. In this, I'm going to talk about what worked and what didn't. I'm going to pick it apart, and then next year I'm going to make it better. Keep tuned.
You could see how I designed it where I had to bend all these individual kinks into it. It's just one long strand or running cable that I kind of just connected at the ends with this crimp. And you can see here between each of these bends in the cable, this is the point where it would contact the road. And on some of these, there's no fraying, but you can see right here there's a significant amount of fraying, and then right over here is another one where there's a lot of fraying. Here's another one right there. And so you could imagine these little guys, they snag on a lot of crap. They're really sharp, and honestly, I'm kind of scared if you had a bald tire, how that would impact it. How this fraying would possibly result in a flat tube or whatever. Honestly, I noticed these the most though when I would bring my bike indoor. It would grab the carpet and it'd kind of fray the carpet a little bit, and so it's kind of not a good thing, especially since the reason I went with this design was because the alternatives to people that were doing kind of a ghetto ice traction system was to have screws running through your tread of your tire. So here I've got one of my tires. They would put the screws so they'd be poking out of the tire, and so they would grab onto the ice. The problem is that I wanted to be able to take this thing indoors, and those screws would shred up the carpet. Well, this is maybe a little bit better, but it's still not perfect. Another thing that was kind of a pain in the behind with this being one solid running piece is with putting it onto the tire. It took me, gosh, an hour and a half or something, maybe an hour, I don't know. It was the beginning of the season, but it took me forever to get this stupid thing put on the tire. And so that was kind of obnoxious, because what I did is I would grab each one of these corners with some of this paracord, and I would run the paracord continuously from one, wrap it around the rim, and grab the other corner and wrap it back around the rim and grab the other one and back around, and so on all the way around the whole thing. And so that took a while, because when you pull on one, it pulls on the other, and so it was really hard to tighten the whole thing. I had to do it sequentially, and it took a lot of effort, and honestly it was kind of frustrating. One other area of frustration on this thing is the lack of flexibility of this cable. As I would wrap it around my tire here, you would have a little bit that kind of hangs off on the side, and it's hard to illustrate it, but sometimes you would get, especially with this thing kind of imbalancing, you'd get one of the corners that would end right there at the edge of the tread, just with trying to wire this whole thing on at one time. It's just kind of how it ended up, is there would be a little bit of imbalances. You'd have one end where the corner's just barely sticking out, and then on the other side of it, the cable would be all the way over like that. And so anyways, it would stick out a little bit too far perhaps, and as a result, it would kind of slap the inside of this. Now notice I have a mud guard on, and so it saved my fork a little bit, but you can see where it slapped right there, and then it slapped a little bit on this side. You can't really see because of the lighting, and so it was kind of noisy. And if I didn't have that mud guard on, then this cable here would have left some scratches on my fork, which wouldn't have been cool. Perhaps one last thing that was a con that maybe just would be a con with any kind of cable system like this was it was kind of maybe a little bit more bumpy. Every time you'd run over one of these cables, the tire would kind of bounce a little bit. It's not very big. I chose 1/8 inch cable, and so the impact of this was pretty minimal. But you could notice it when I strapped the camera to my handlebars. The camera would kind of shake a bit because of those bumps that the tire was constantly rolling over. Now, enough about the cons. What about the pros of this thing? This thing worked amazing. I was blown away with how well this worked on the ice. I only had it on my front wheel. I didn't have it on the back wheel. But this this cable here really gripped that ice well. And the spacing between these cables was just perfect, where I could have rubber traction on the street, but when it came to the ice, there was no slipping. I didn't ever slide out on corners at all. Because of this system, I was able to ride on some pretty icy roads. Now granted, that's ice. Snow is a different thing. Snow is different because it's more slick and slippery. It doesn't have the same adhesive properties as the ice has. Snow slides on itself, and especially when you get into slush. Slush is like trying to ride through sand, and there's really not any solution to being able to ride through the slush, especially, but even snow, especially looser snow. But when it comes to ice, and a mix between ice and street, and even ice, street, and gravel, this system worked great on my mountain bike. So the cable would do amazing on the ice. The rubber on the tire right here would do really good on the street. And the fact that this tire here is built for gravel also did really well. And so I was really impressed with how this thing performed over the winter.
I started this thing pretty late in the season, and would I do it again? Heck yeah. Would I make some changes? Heck yeah. Am I gonna make another video on how to do those changes? Heck yeah. This is Justin the Germ of Montana. Follow me for more on the Broken Seat Post. Peace, y'all.